This is MEZA GRANDDCUHESS RASMASKONEN, also known as Ryan Tomlinson, on this 29th day of October 2013 at 9:20 p.m. Well, what a fantabulous week it has been so far, coming from last week and this week. Darling, can you believe it? What are we doing in international affairs? What's really going on? Well, the whole of the United Nations was in Washington, D.C., and whoever was worried about NSA was worried about something else. I still think on the international front and the national front, the downfall to the NSA was Mr. Snowden and Miss Chelsea Manning or Channing or whatever he wants to call himself. With all due respect, Bradley Manning, my apologies. I still think that they are national treasures, national heroes. Uh, why not traitor? Why should they be traitors? The real traitors betrayed the consistency and the constancy of our republic and of our democracy and of our constitution. So forth that we are losing credibility as a power, as a nation, and so forth. And so forth, we must advance in technology and so forth, but things can be done discreetly, things can be done ethically and with humanity and so forth. With that being said, right, that still disastrous front we have called diplomacy and international relationship. Uh, no one cares. I think the general populace is tired of it. It's only that top percentile of Americans that have middle class jobs and who have to interact with international clients. They are the ones that are really worried. Uh, what's next on that agenda? We say. What what are the positives of all of this NSA, the spine, and so forth? Well, we know Al Qaeda is not really Al Qaeda for what it is. I mean, the CIA is just unraveling. I believe the government, and it's all unraveling. I really don't understand why. Or maybe some of us are just privileged to more information than others. CIA, I really believe, is unraveling and so forth. So much that we have taken our attentions to Obamacare, which is not really an issue. It's an issue for Americans. I don't know what the hang up about that is, but I'm not there right yet at Obamacare. I'm at international foreign relationships. What it has done, the positive it has done is for Syria. We know that now that it was Turkey. If you don't know, it was Turkey who was really supplying the chemical weapons and so forth. This is the this was to get Assad out of power and so forth. The bottom line is the Middle East is to make Saudi Arabia the paradigm shift from Egypt to Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia would back getting Assad out of power, and Egypt wouldn't, because they saw no necessity to destabilize the region. Well, now the region is destabilized and so forth. We have to contend with that. It's harder for them to get the Assad family out of power. And I saw where in that peacekeeping mission they said the first line defense to peace in the Middle East and the peace in Syria is Assad should step down. Wrong. I think they're going about it wrong. They're wrong, and they're trespassing on a culture of people that was quite stable, and before we intervened with these terrorists and supported them to dethrone that government undemocratically. Wrong, because any peace that must come from that process in the Middle East, it must come with the leaders that they must come to an international understanding with those in power and those that are going to assume power in the future, so that there can be of an understanding as well as a necessity to provide a stable environment for the populace and the citizenry to transition themselves from one leadership to the next leadership without without creating refugee crises, refugee crisis and so forth, and burdening other countries in the region. I don't think that Saudi Arabia will maintain its focus as the power between Israel and rest of the Middle East. It's not going to happen. And the biggest mistake the Americans made was the whole Egyptian crisis. We don't know how that is going to play out yet, but it's playing out really well. I saw this from the beginning, and the end of it, darling, no one knows. Obama sure has his hand full. I can see that his inexperience really is not in the ideal, but in the understanding of some of the issues that he faces as a leader. Maybe because he did not grow up uh, in some circumstances, and I'm not even going to say it, but it's my personal opinion, and I think that is where some of his lapses are. And then again, I don't know who his advisors are. Who knows? Maybe that's all. Let me leave that one alone. I want to touch on one subject now when it comes to Obamacare and technology and international relationships and spying. We had that little Navy man that shot all those people in the Navy Yard in downtown DC. We understand in the New York Times and the Washington Post that Raytheon is going to sell this sonar technology for $1.67 billion. Darling, do you understand what the sonar technology is? If you understood what it was and its basis and how it would develop, this little man that shot all these people was saying, eh, um, he said that they were messing with his mind, which some people thought that he was schizophrenic or he was hearing voices. He said they were messing with his mind, the sonar. They were using sonar to mess with his mind and it was making him crazy. People didn't understand what he was talking about, but no, I do understand. And so who becomes responsibility? This sonar technology, its capabilities and the understandings and how it is used, darling. If you understood that, you would not blame this man. This man physically shoot these people. But who pulled the trigger? You should be taking this, his family and his friends. You should take this into deep consideration. That man said the sonar. That means, darling, the murderers are the ones manning the technology. Your relative, this little man, this shooter, was the pawn. And so therefore the responsibility, these murders, these unlike some of these little things that happen in the military and around military families, and you hear your child is dead and your son is dead, and you said, how could this happen to my child? Know that, darling, the resultants of experiments and so forth triggers certain reaction for the advancement of the department systems of the Department of Defense, so much so that he implicated Raytheon and this sonar technology and or whoever is operating it before he died. And darling, that is the real criminal, that is the real murderer at the Navy Yard. And if I were you, I would take a lawsuit and I would fight. If it's family, I would fight and I would take the victims and I would sue the government until you get something out of it. It's time for a change in America, and it's time that we start as common folks coming together in unity and banding against the status quo because they must go. It's time for them to go. Mm. And then another comment I have, darling, the next general election, we want a president this time. We don't want a Democrat. We don't want a Republican. A Republican. We want a president. And I am going to lay out the rules of how we should elect this person and how we should select this person, because we are not going to Washington this time, and we're going to start from the top, because when we elect this person, America, we're doing this for change. We're doing this so that we can have peace that we want. We're doing it for the standards to which we form our constitution and our democracy. Ordinary citizens, we are going to do this. And I will govern these rules because we're not choosing a Democrat and a Republican. They can be vice president, but not in the presidential seat. And I only have 10 minutes. Let me go and we will talk about this next time.